Before we begin this story, I need you to do something for me. If you've ever been overlooked, underpaid, or dismissed at work because of who you are rather than what you can do, hit that like button right now. And if by the end of this story you feel that rush of justice being served, share this with someone who needs to hear that karma is real. Trust me, this revenge is so satisfying, you'll want to come back for more. My name is Tal, and for 5 years, I was the invisible backbone of Meridian Tech Solutions in Madison, Wisconsin. At 34, I should have been at the peak of my career. Instead, I was watching less qualified people, specifically, less qualified men, climb over me like I was a stepping stone rather than a human being. Let me paint you a picture of what systematic destruction looks like in corporate America. It started subtly in 2020. I was a senior analyst in the Strategic Development Division, reporting to our vice president, Marcus Chen. Marcus was the kind of executive who wore $3,000 suits to casual Fridays and had a handshake that could crush walnuts. He'd risen through the ranks not through competence, but through what he called strategic relationship building, which was corporate speak for taking credit for other people's work. The first red flag should have been during my initial performance review under him. Despite leading 3 successful product launches that generated $12 million in revenue, my evaluation came back as meets expectations. Meanwhile, Brad from my team, who I'd personally trained and whose biggest achievement was organizing the Fantasy Football League, received exceeds expectations and a 15% raise. You understand, Tal, Marcus had said, leaning back in his leather chair that cost more than my monthly rent. Brad has a family to support. These things matter in compensation decisions. I wanted to scream that I had a family too, my mother's cancer treatments weren't paying for themselves. But I bit my tongue. That's what we do, isn't it? We bite our tongues until they bleed, hoping that professionalism will eventually be rewarded. The pattern of targeted elimination was methodical and cruel. Every Monday morning meeting, Marcus would assign the high-visibility projects to his boys' club, a rotating cast of mediocre men who spent more time on the golf course than in the office. Meanwhile, I was relegated to what he called support work, essentially doing the heavy lifting while others took the bows. There was the Davidson Industries proposal, 200 pages of market analysis and strategic recommendations that took me 3 months to compile. The day before the presentation, Marcus informed me that Tyler would be presenting it to the board. "You're just not client-facing material," he'd said, his eyes never leaving his phone. Tyler stuttered through my slides, mispronounced key terms, and still got promoted 2 months later. Then came the Phoenix Project, a complete restructuring of our West Coast operations. I worked 18-hour days, sacrificed weekends, missed my nephew's birthday party. When it succeeded beyond projections, saving the company $8 million annually, the company newsletter featured a photo of Marcus and his hand-picked team of innovators. I wasn't even mentioned in the footnotes. But the cruelest cut came during the 2022 salary review season. Through the office grapevine, and by that, I mean Jennifer from HR who'd had too much wine at the holiday party, I learned that every male analyst at my level was making at least $35,000 more than me. Some who'd been there half as long were earning $50,000 more. The market determines these things, Marcus explained when I finally worked up the courage to ask. Men are just more aggressive negotiators. Maybe you should take an assertiveness training course. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd been assertive. I'd negotiated. I'd provided market data showing I was underpaid by industry standards. But apparently, assertiveness only counts when it comes in a baritone voice. The psychological warfare extended beyond compensation. Marcus had a special talent for public humiliation disguised as mentorship. During team meetings, he'd interrupt my presentations to clarify points that needed no clarification. He'd schedule important calls during my lunch break, then express disappointment when I was unavailable. He once asked me to take notes during a strategy session, a session where I was supposed to be a key contributor, because someone needs to capture all these brilliant ideas from the team. The worst part? Everyone saw it happening. My colleagues would give me sympathetic looks, some would quietly whisper, "That was your idea," when Marcus presented my strategies as his own. But sympathy doesn't pay bills or advance careers. And speaking up? That was career suicide. I'd seen what happened to Sarah from marketing when she'd filed a complaint about Marcus's behavior. She was managed out within 6 months, her reputation mysteriously tarnished by rumors of performance issues. By year 3, I developed a constant knot in my stomach. Sunday nights were the worst, the creeping dread that would start around 6 p.m. and wouldn't leave until Friday afternoon. I'd catch myself rehearsing conversations in the shower, practicing how to present ideas in ways that wouldn't threaten Marcus's ego. I started keeping a journal, documenting every slight, every stolen idea, every discriminatory comment. Not because I planned to use it, at that point, I just needed proof that I wasn't going crazy. The breaking point almost came in January 2024 when Marcus brought in his nephew, fresh out of college with a degree in communications, as a senior strategic consultant at a salary higher than mine. The kid didn't even know how to use Excel properly. I spent 3 weeks training him, only to watch Marcus introduce him to clients as our rising star. But I didn't break. Instead, I did what I'd always done, I put my head down and worked harder. I took on extra projects, stayed later, delivered results that couldn't be ignored. I foolishly believed that eventually, merit would win over nepotism and discrimination. The truth about systematic targeting is that it's designed to make you doubt yourself. Every time I'd think about quitting, Marcus would throw me just enough of a bone to keep me hoping. A small bonus here, a good job there, a hint that big things were coming if I just stayed patient. It's a classic abuser's tactic, intermittent reinforcement that keeps you trapped in a cycle of hope and disappointment. My friends outside of work couldn't understand why I stayed. Just leave, they'd say, as if it were that simple. As if I hadn't invested 5 years building expertise in a specialized field. As if jobs that paid even my inadequate salary grew on trees. As if starting over at 34 wouldn't mean another 5 years of proving myself just to get back to where I already should have been. But throughout all of this, I was keeping a secret. A secret that Marcus, in all his arrogance and casual cruelty, never suspected. You see, while he was busy playing power games and building his empire on the backs of people like me, I was documenting everything. Not just the obvious discrimination, but something much bigger. Something that would eventually be worth $3.6 million in consequences. What Marcus didn't know, what nobody knew, was that I had stumbled upon the smoking gun of corporate discrimination 18 months into his reign of terror. It happened by accident, really. I'd stayed late one Thursday evening in September 2021, trying to finish a quarterly report that Marcus needed urgently for a Friday morning meeting he'd just invented. The office was empty except for the cleaning crew, and I was printing documents in the executive suite's copy room when I heard Marcus's voice from his office. He was on a video call, speaking to someone he kept calling chairman. His door was slightly ajar, and his voice carried in the empty office. The beauty of the system, Marcus was saying, is that it's completely defensible. We base everything on performance metrics that we control. The women never hit the targets because we set different ones internally. On paper, it looks like merit-based compensation. My blood ran cold. I stood frozen by the printer, afraid to move, afraid to breathe. The voice on the speaker continued, "The board loves the labor cost savings. We're running 23% under market for female employees across all divisions. That's nearly $3.6 million annually that goes straight to the bottom line." And if anyone complains, the chairman asked. Marcus laughed, that distinctive hyena cackle I'd come to despise. We have the documentation to show they're underperforming. The metrics don't lie, even if we designed them to ensure certain outcomes. Besides, most of them are too grateful to have jobs to rock the boat. The ones who do complain? Well, we have ways of managing them out. I carefully pulled out my phone and started recording, my hands shaking so badly I almost dropped it. For the next 10 minutes, I captured Marcus outlining what he called the strategic compensation framework, a systematic approach to underpaying women and minorities while maintaining plausible deniability. But that was just the beginning of what I would uncover. Over the following months, I became a detective in my own workplace. I learned that the executive printer saved copies of all documents to a server for 90 days, a server that IT had given me access to years ago for a project and never revoked. Late nights and weekends, I'd carefully download documents, always from different computers, always using the generic guest login that IT never monitored. What I found was staggering. There were emails between Marcus and HR discussing how to manage expectations for female employees. Spreadsheets with 2 columns for performance ratings, actual and adjusted for compensation purposes. Meeting notes where Marcus explicitly instructed managers to find development areas for women up for promotion to justify keeping them in place. The most damning evidence was a PowerPoint presentation Marcus had created for the board's compensation committee. Slide 23 was titled Labor Cost Optimization Through Strategic Diversity Management. It included a graph showing the savings achieved through differentiated compensation strategies, corporate doublespeak for systemic discrimination. The graph showed that Meridian Tech had saved $3.6 million annually for the past 3 years by underpaying women and minorities. But here's where Marcus's arrogance became his downfall. He'd included actual employee names and salaries in the appendix, comparing them directly by gender and race. My name was there, alongside every other woman in the department, with our salaries compared to our male counterparts. The differences were staggering. Some women were being paid 40% less for identical roles. I meticulously documented everything. I created encrypted backups, stored copies in multiple cloud services under anonymous accounts, even mailed physical copies to a P.O. box I'd rented under an LLC I'd created. I researched whistleblower protections, studied employment law, consulted with attorneys under assumed names. I learned about the Equal Pay Act, Title VII violations, and the astronomical penalties for systematic wage discrimination. The evidence I'd gathered wasn't just about individual discrimination, it was proof of a conspiracy that went to the highest levels of the company. The chairman of the board, the entire compensation committee, HR leadership, they were all complicit. The emails showed they knew exactly what they were doing and had created elaborate systems to hide it. But I couldn't act yet. As any good poker player knows, you don't show your hand until the pot is worth winning. And Marcus was about to give me the perfect opportunity to play my cards. What sustained me through the next 2 years of continued abuse was the knowledge that I held the power to destroy everything Marcus had built. Every condescending comment, every stolen idea, every passed-over promotion, I endured it all knowing that I was sitting on evidence worth millions in damages and penalties. I even calculated it once, late at night with a glass of wine and a spreadsheet. Based on comparable lawsuits, the back pay alone for all affected employees would be around $10 million. EEOC penalties could add another $5 million. The class action lawsuit that would inevitably follow? Potentially $50 million or more. And that didn't even account for the reputational damage, the shareholder lawsuits, or the criminal charges that could follow. Marcus thought he was the predator and I was the prey. He had no idea that I'd been patiently building a case that would not only end his career but potentially land him in federal prison. The Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Act, which I'd studied extensively, meant that each discriminatory paycheck was a separate violation. With bi-weekly pay periods over 3 years for hundreds of employees, we were talking about thousands of individual violations. The secret gave me strength. When Marcus would humiliate me in meetings, I'd think about the FBI raid that would eventually come. When he'd take credit for my work, I'd imagine him doing a perp walk in handcuffs. When he'd make another snide comment about women being too emotional for leadership, I'd picture his face when he realized that this emotional woman had orchestrated his complete destruction. But I needed one more thing, a trigger event that would make my revelation impossible to ignore or suppress. Something so public, so undeniable, that the company couldn't sweep it under the rug or manage me out quietly. And Marcus, in his infinite hubris, was about to hand it to me on a silver platter. April 15, 2025. Mark that date. That's the day Marcus Chin finally pushed too far, and the day my revenge began. The Pinnacle Innovation Summit was Meridian Tech's crown jewel event, a 3-day conference where we showcased our newest technologies to investors, clients, and media. This year, it was being held at the Monona Terrace in Madison, with over 500 attendees including several Fortune 500 CEOs and tech journalists from major publications. For 6 months, I'd been working on Project Prometheus, a revolutionary AI-driven supply chain optimization system that could save companies millions. It was my baby, my masterpiece. I'd developed the algorithms, built the prototypes, run the pilot programs. The beta test showed efficiency improvements of 34% and cost reductions averaging $2.3 million per implementation. Marcus knew how important this project was to me. Which is exactly why he chose it as his ultimate weapon of humiliation. The morning of the presentation, I arrived at the convention center at 6 a.m. to do a final run-through. My slides were perfect, my demo was flawless, and I'd rehearsed my presentation so many times I could do it in my sleep. This was my moment to finally get the recognition I deserved. At 7:30 a.m., Marcus called me to his temporary office in the conference center. Change of plans, he said, not even looking up from his phone. Ryan will be presenting Prometheus. Ryan. His newest golden boy. A 26-year-old MBA who'd been with the company for exactly 3 months and thought AI stood for artificial intelligence only because someone had told him last week. That's my project, I said, my voice surprisingly steady despite the rage building inside me. I've worked on it for 6 months. My name is on every patent filing. Marcus finally looked up, and the smirk on his face told me everything. This wasn't a last-minute decision. This was calculated cruelty. The board wants a fresh face representing our innovation sector, he said. Someone who embodies the future of the company. You understand. You mean someone male, I said. His smirk widened. I mean someone executive material. Ryan has that special something. That je ne sais quoi. You're brilliant at the technical work, Tal, but let's face it, you're not exactly leadership material. Some people are meant to be the brains behind the operation, and some are meant to be the face. You should be grateful we're letting your work shine, even if you're not the one in the spotlight. Something inside me snapped. But instead of exploding, I went cold. Ice cold. I see, I said. And what exactly will Ryan be presenting, considering he doesn't understand the first thing about the technology? You'll brief him, of course. You have, he checked his Rolex, another unnecessary display of wealth, about 90 minutes. I'm sure you can give him enough to get through the presentation. The investors don't need all the technical details anyway. They just need the vision, and Ryan's very good at selling vision. And if I refuse? Marcus's eyes hardened. Then you can clean out your desk today. Your choice, Tal. Play ball or find another game. In that moment, I knew I had him. He'd finally given me the perfect stage for my revenge. But I needed him to think he'd won. Fine, I said, letting my shoulders slump in defeat. I'll brief Ryan. The next 90 minutes were torture and theater combined. I sat with Ryan, watching him butcher technical terms and misunderstand fundamental concepts. He kept referring to machine learning as computer thinking and called neural networks brain webs. It would have been funny if it weren't so insulting. Don't worry about memorizing all this nerd stuff, Ryan said, clapping me on the shoulder with fake camaraderie. Marcus says I just need to hit the high points. You know how it is, too much detail and you lose the audience. Better to keep it simple for the money people. At 11 a.m., the main auditorium filled with attendees. I sat in the back row, my phone ready, my heart pounding. On stage, Marcus introduced our innovative team leader, Ryan Morrison, who's been instrumental in developing our next-generation AI solutions. Ryan took the stage with the confidence of mediocrity that only comes from never having to earn anything. He started strong, reading from the teleprompter I'd prepared. But then, the questions started. Can you explain the learning algorithm's approach to anomaly detection? Asked Dr. Patricia Williams from MIT. Ryan's face went blank. Well, the algorithm learns by, detecting things that are different. Anomalies. It's very sophisticated. The audience started murmuring. Dr. Williams pressed on. But what specific methodology does it use? Isolation forests? Autoencoding? Statistical deviation modeling? All of those, Ryan said desperately. It's a comprehensive approach. That's when I stood up. Actually, I called out, my voice carrying across the auditorium, the system uses a hybrid approach combining variational autoencoders with adaptive threshold modeling. I should know, I developed it. Every head in the room turned to me. Marcus's face went from red to purple. Perhaps, I continued, walking down the aisle toward the stage, the actual developer should explain the technology? Unless, of course, Mr. Morrison would like to explain why he's presenting my work. The room erupted. Journalists started recording. Investors pulled out phones. And in that chaos, I played my ace. In fact, I said, now standing at the base of the stage, I have documentation here showing not just the theft of this project, but systematic discrimination affecting hundreds of employees at Meridian Tech. I pulled out my phone and, with shaking hands, sent a mass email to every attendee whose contact information I'd gathered from the registration list. The subject line, evidence of $3.6 million annual wage theft at Meridian Tech. What are you doing? Marcus hissed into his mic, forgetting it was still on. I'm done being silent, I replied, my voice now being broadcast throughout the auditorium. For 5 years, I've watched you steal credit, underpay women, and build your career on our backs. But today, everyone will know the truth. The email contained a sampling of the evidence, enough to prove systemic discrimination but not enough to compromise the legal case. Salary comparisons, Marcus's emails about managing women out, and yes, the recording of him discussing the discrimination scheme with the chairman. Within minutes, phones were pinging throughout the auditorium. Journalists were furiously typing. Several investors stood up and walked out. The conference organizer was frantically trying to cut the feed to the live stream, but it was too late. Everything had already been captured and was spreading across social media. Marcus tried to salvage the situation. This is obviously a disgruntled employee making baseless accusations. Security, please escort Ms. Actually, interrupted a voice from the audience, I'm Linda Patterson from the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. Ms. Tal, was it? I'd very much like to speak with you after this. The EEOC had someone at the conference. Of course they did, it was a major tech event. And I'd just handed them the case of the decade on livestream. But I wasn't done. As security approached, I pulled out one more document. Before I go, I said, Ryan, would you like to explain this email where you called the project too complicated for your pretty little brain to handle when Marcus assigned you to present it this morning? Or should I read it to everyone? Ryan's face went white. He'd sent that email to his fraternity brothers, bragging about getting credit for some chick's work. How did I have it? Let's just say that anyone who uses password 123 as their email password shouldn't brag about stealing someone else's intellectual property. The next few minutes were chaos. Marcus tried to have me removed, but several board members who were in attendance intervened. The conference was officially cancelled for the day. 3 news crews showed up within an hour. And by that evening, #Meridian discrimination was trending on Twitter with over 10 million views. But the best part? The part that made everything worth it? As I was leaving the conference center, surrounded by reporters and with Linda Patterson from the EEOC at my side, I passed Marcus in the hallway. He was on the phone, probably with legal, his face a mask of panic and rage. I stopped, looked him dead in the eye, and said loud enough for everyone to hear, some people are meant to be the brains behind the operation, and some are meant to be the face. But you, Marcus? You're about to be neither. The Washington Post photographer captured that moment. It became the header image for their expose on corporate discrimination. Marcus's expression, a mixture of fury, fear, and dawning realization, was priceless. It's still my laptop wallpaper. What most people don't understand about revenge is that the explosive moment, that glorious public destruction, is just the tip of the iceberg. The real work happens in the months of careful preparation, the chess moves planned 10 steps ahead, the contingencies for every possible counterattack. After the conference disaster, I knew Marcus and Meridian Tech would come at me with everything they had. But I'd been preparing for this war for 3 years. Within 2 hours of leaving the conference center, I received a call from Meridian's chief legal officer, David Sterling. His voice was honey smooth with an undertone of steel. Ms. Tal, I think there's been a misunderstanding. Mr. Chen may have been overzealous in his management style, but I'm sure we can resolve this internally. Why don't you come to the office tomorrow and we can discuss a mutually beneficial solution? Translation, come in so we can fire you, discredit you, and bury this story. I'll be happy to meet, I replied, with my attorney present, at a neutral location, with an EEOC representative in attendance. The silence on the other end was delicious. That seems excessive, David finally said. So does 3 years of systematic wage discrimination, I countered. I'll have my attorney contact you. My attorney. I'd actually retained 3 different law firms over the past year, each specializing in different aspects of the case. Marlene Fisher from Fisher & Associates handled employment discrimination. James Watanabe from Watanabe Legal specialized in whistleblower protections. And Sarah Goldstein from Goldstein, Matthews & Porter was an expert in class action suits. I'd paid for them using my mother's life insurance money. She'd passed away 6 months earlier, another casualty of America's healthcare system. She'd always told me to fight for what was right. This was for her as much as it was for me. The legal strategy was multi-pronged. First, the EEOC complaint. Linda Patterson fast-tracked the investigation given the public nature of the evidence. Within 48 hours, they'd issued a preservation order to Meridian Tech, preventing them from destroying any documents. Too late, of course, I already had everything. Second, the whistleblower complaint to the SEC. Meridian was publicly traded, and hiding material information about discrimination liabilities from shareholders was securities fraud. The potential fine started at $10 million. Third, the class action. Sarah Goldstein had already identified 847 potential plaintiffs, every woman and minority employee who'd been underpaid over the past 6 years. The damages could exceed $100 million. But the legal strategy was just one piece. The court of public opinion mattered just as much. I hired Amanda Torres, a PR strategist who'd handled several high-profile discrimination cases. She crafted my media strategy with military precision. We did exclusive interviews with major outlets, each revealing new pieces of evidence. The New York Times got the salary spreadsheets. The Wall Street Journal got the recorded conversation. 60 Minutes got the PowerPoint presentation to the board. Social media became our battlefield. Amanda created a website, truthaboutmeridian.com, where employees could anonymously share their stories. Within a week, we had over 200 testimonials. The hashtag Meridian discrimination evolved into hashtag corporate equality, sparking a nationwide conversation about pay gaps. But Marcus wasn't sitting idle. Meridian hired Preston and Associates, known for their aggressive tactics in defending corporate discrimination cases. They immediately went on the offensive. First, they tried to discredit me. A sudden audit of my expense reports found irregularities, $47 in questioned charges over 5 years, mainly parking receipts that were slightly faded. They leaked this to friendly media outlets as evidence of my pattern of deception. Then came the character assassination. Anonymous sources started telling reporters about my difficult personality and inability to work with others. They dredged up a performance review from my first year where a manager, who'd been fired for sexual harassment 2 years later, had called me resistant to feedback. The cyber attack started next. My email was hacked, my social media accounts targeted. They were looking for anything, a drunk photo, an angry post, anything to paint me as unstable or vindictive. They found nothing because I'd scrubbed everything months ago, anticipating this exact strategy. But I had my own countermoves. Remember Ryan, the golden boy who'd tried to present my work? After the conference fiasco, he'd panicked and reached out to me, begging me not to reveal more of his emails. I told him I had no interest in destroying a pawn, but if he wanted redemption, he could help expose the king. Ryan flipped. He provided emails showing Marcus explicitly instructing him to take credit for my work. He revealed that Marcus had a spreadsheet ranking female employees by management potential, which seemed to correlate suspiciously with their appearance. He even recorded Marcus during a damage control meeting saying, "I don't care what it costs, bury that bitch." That recording was pure gold. Then there was Jennifer from HR, the one who'd revealed the salary disparities at the holiday party. She'd been living with the guilt of processing discriminatory compensation packages for years. When I approached her with evidence that protected her as a whistleblower, she didn't just cooperate, she became my inside source. Jennifer provided the smoking gun, a separate set of HR files, hidden on a private server, that contained the real performance reviews and salary recommendations before Marcus adjusted them. It showed that I'd actually been recommended for promotion 6 times, each one killed by Marcus personally. The forensic accountant I hired, Dr. Michael Patterson, no relation to Linda from the EEOC, analyzed the financial data and found something even Marcus didn't know: his discrimination scheme had actually cost the company money. Yes, they saved on salaries, but the turnover rate for female employees was 340% higher than males, and the recruitment and training costs far exceeded the salary savings. The company had lost an estimated $15 million in productivity and replacement costs. We packaged this into a report titled The Hidden Cost of Discrimination, a Meridian Tech Case Study. When it hit LinkedIn, it was shared over 50,000 times in 48 hours. MBA programs started using it as a teaching case. The Harvard Business Review wanted to publish it. But the masterpiece of my revenge strategy was something I called the avalanche. I'd identified 23 different regulatory bodies that had jurisdiction over various aspects of Meridian's discrimination: the EEOC, SEC, Department of Labor, Wisconsin Department of Workforce Development, Madison Equal Opportunities Commission, and more. Instead of filing complaints piecemeal, we coordinated to file everything on the same day, May 15, 2025. Exactly 1 month after the conference incident. Each complaint was tailored to that agency's specific mandate but referenced the others, creating an interconnected web that would be impossible for Meridian to fight on all fronts. It was regulatory warfare, and it was beautiful. The night before the avalanche, I couldn't sleep. I sat in my apartment, surrounded by boxes of evidence, legal briefs, and strategy documents. 3 years of my life had led to this moment. Win or lose, there was no going back. At 11:59 p.m., I sent a final email to Marcus. The subject line was simple: checkmate. The body contained just one line: some people are meant to be the brains behind the operation. Tomorrow, you'll see what this brain can do. At exactly 9 a.m. on May 15, 2025, 23 regulatory complaints were filed simultaneously. By 9:15, Meridian stock had dropped 12%. By noon, it was down 30%. The board called an emergency meeting. The avalanche had begun, and Marcus was standing directly in its path. May 15, 2025, 9 a.m. The moment 23 regulatory complaints hit simultaneously, Meridian Tech's corporate headquarters turned into a war zone. I watched it all unfold from a coffee shop across the street, the same one where I'd spent countless lunch breaks crying in the bathroom after Marcus's latest humiliation. But today, I sat by the window with my legal team, watching the dominoes fall. The first sign was the black SUVs. 3 of them pulled up at 9:23 a.m. FBI agents emerged, carrying boxes and wearing those iconic windbreakers. The Securities and Exchange Commission had elevated our complaint to criminal investigation status based on the evidence of securities fraud, hiding discrimination liabilities from shareholders. My phone buzzed with a text from Jennifer in HR. They're raiding Marcus's office. He just threw his laptop in the trash can and is claiming it was stolen yesterday. Destroying evidence. Add obstruction of justice to his growing list of crimes. By 10 a.m., local news vans had surrounded the building. Someone, definitely not me, though Amanda Torres winked when I asked, had tipped them off about the raids. The headline "FBI raids tech giant over discrimination scandal" was already trending. At 10:47 a.m., the board convened via emergency video conference. Thanks to Wisconsin's open records laws and the fact that Meridian had state contracts, parts of this meeting would eventually become public. But I didn't need to wait, I had a source in that room. Ryan Morrison, in his desperate attempt to save himself, was live texting me everything. Chairman just said, how the fuck did we not see this coming? They're calculating potential damages. CFO says minimum $50 million, could be $200 million plus. Someone just asked if Marcus has a criminal defense attorney. Holy shit, they're discussing whether to fire him for cause to void his golden parachute. At 11:15 a.m., Meridian stock price triggered an automatic trading halt after dropping 40%. The company had lost $2.3 billion in market value in just over 2 hours. Then came the employee revolt. Remember that website where employees could share their stories? Amanda had been holding back the most damaging ones, waiting for this moment. At precisely noon, we released the Meridian Files, 127 detailed accounts of discrimination, harassment, and retaliation under Marcus's leadership. Story number 47 was from Lisa Chen. No relation to Marcus. I developed the algorithm that became our flagship product. Marcus presented it to the board as his own. When I complained, he put me on a performance improvement plan. Story number 78 was from Derek Washington. As the only black manager in my division, I was paid $45,000 less than my white counterparts. When I brought market data to Marcus, he said I should be grateful for the opportunity. Story number 103 was anonymous but devastating. Marcus Chen sexually harassed me for 2 years. When I reported it to HR, he had me transferred to our Seattle office. I had to leave my family behind or lose my job. That last one triggered something Jennifer from HR had been sitting on: 3 formal sexual harassment complaints against Marcus that had been buried by David Sterling, the chief legal officer. Jennifer released them to the EOC at 12:30 p.m. By 1 p.m., protesters had gathered outside Meridian's headquarters. The Wisconsin Coalition for Equal Pay, the Tech Workers Alliance, and several other organizations had mobilized their members. They carried signs reading "Equal Pay for Equal Work" and "Marcus Chen, Wage Thief." Inside the building, according to Jennifer, it was chaos. Employees were openly discussing the scandal. The dev team had replaced the company's internal homepage with a single message: "We stand with Tal." Security tried to restore it, but somehow, definitely not because I'd given the dev team admin credentials I'd kept from an old project, they couldn't change it back. At 2:17 p.m., the first domino fell. The Government Contracts Division received notice that all federal contracts were under review pending the investigation. That was $500 million in annual revenue at risk. At 2:45 p.m., three major clients announced they were reassessing their relationship with Meridian Tech Translation. They were gone unless heads rolled. At 3:20 p.m., the board made their first move. David Sterling, the chief legal officer who'd helped cover up the discrimination, announced his resignation to pursue other opportunities. Sure, David. Other opportunities in federal prison, maybe. But Marcus? Marcus was fighting. His lawyer, the notorious William Prescott, released a statement calling me a disgruntled employee seeking attention and the evidence taken out of context. He actually had the audacity to claim that the recorded conversation about discrimination was hypothetical scenario planning. That's when I played my nuclear option. You see, Marcus had a side business that he thought nobody knew about. He ran a consulting firm that secretly competed with Meridian for contracts, using insider information to underbid his own employer. It was corporate espionage and breach of fiduciary duty worth millions in damages. How did I know? Because Marcus was sloppy. He'd used his work computer to access the consulting firm's accounts, and our IT system logged everything. I'd discovered it months ago while gathering discrimination evidence and sat on it, waiting for the perfect moment. At 4 p.m., I had Sarah Goldstein file an amended complaint adding corporate espionage charges. We also sent the evidence to the district attorney, who was already smarting from criticism about not prosecuting white-collar crime. At 4:33 p.m., Marcus Chen was escorted out of Meridian Tech headquarters by security. Someone filmed it on their phone, Marcus, his banker's box of belongings, being perp-walked to his Tesla while hundreds of employees watched from the windows. The video got 3 million views in the first hour. But the true beauty of the revenge came at 5 p.m., when the markets closed. Meridian Tech stock had dropped 47% in a single day, wiping out $3.1 billion in value. Marcus's personal stake in the company, he owned 2.3 million shares, had lost $74 million in value. His options, which would have vested next month, were now worthless. The financial blogs were calling it the Meridian Massacre. One analyst wrote, "This is what happens when discrimination isn't just morally wrong but materially relevant to shareholders." The hidden liability of systematic bias just became very, very visible. That evening, I sat in my apartment watching the news coverage. Every channel led with the story. CNN had a panel discussing the real cost of corporate discrimination. Fox Business was analyzing the market implications. MSNBC was calling for criminal prosecutions. My phone hadn't stopped ringing. Job offers from companies wanting to prove their commitment to equality. Book agents smelling a bestseller. Movie producers seeing Oscar bait. I ignored them all. This wasn't about fame or money. At 8 p.m., Marcus did an interview with Bloomberg, trying to salvage his reputation. He looked haggard, his usual perfect hair disheveled, his designer suit wrinkled. The interviewer, Rebecca Chen, also no relation, Marcus's bad luck with Chen's continued, eviscerated him. "Mr. Chen, you're on recording discussing a scheme to underpay women. How is that out of context? The evidence shows you personally killed 6 promotions for the whistleblower. How do you explain that? Your own nephew admitted you instructed him to steal credit for her work. Are you calling your nephew a liar?" Marcus fumbled every answer. He contradicted himself, lost his temper, and at one point actually said, "Women just aren't as aggressive in negotiations." On live television. In 2025. While being investigated for gender discrimination. The interview was such a disaster that it spawned its own memes. "Women just aren't as aggressive" became an ironic rallying cry. Someone auto-tuned his stammering denials into a remix that got 10 million views on TikTok. But the best moment came at 11:47 p.m. A notification popped up on my phone. Marcus Chen had been placed on administrative leave pending investigation, effective immediately. The board had finally acted. I opened a bottle of wine, the good stuff I'd been saving for 3 years, and toasted my mother's picture on the mantel. "We got him, Mom," I whispered. "We finally got him." But I wasn't done. Not even close. The next 6 weeks were a masterclass in watching a man's entire world crumble, brick by brick, until nothing remained but rubble and regret. May 16, 2025, the criminal charges. At 7 a.m., Marcus Chen was arrested at his $3.2 million home in Maple Bluff. The FBI had been building a case all night based on the evidence of securities fraud and corporate espionage. His neighbor, a doctor I'd treated as a patient years ago, filmed the arrest and sent it to me with a simple message: "Karma is beautiful." Marcus, in pajamas and handcuffs, being led to an FBI vehicle while his wife stood in the doorway screaming at agents. The mighty VP who'd once told me I lacked executive presence now looked like a broken man who'd aged 10 years overnight. The charges were extensive: wire fraud, securities fraud, conspiracy to commit discrimination, destruction of evidence, and breach of fiduciary duty. The federal prosecutor, Janet Morrison, Ryan's aunt, in a delicious twist of irony, announced she would be seeking the maximum penalties. Marcus faced up to 20 years in federal prison. May 20, 2025, the exodus. The dominoes kept falling at Meridian Tech. By the end of the first week, 7 more executives resigned, all implicated in the discrimination scheme. 43 discrimination lawsuits were filed by employees who'd found courage in my actions. 12 major clients terminated their contracts. The entire HR department was under investigation. The board fired the entire compensation committee. But the most satisfying resignation came from someone unexpected: the chairman of the board, Robert Hutchinson, the voice from that recorded call. Turns out he'd been using a similar scheme at his other companies. When forensic accountants started digging, they found a pattern of discrimination spanning 3 decades and 7 companies. The Wall Street Journal called it the Hutchinson system, a blueprint for corporate discrimination that had stolen hundreds of millions from women and minorities. May 27, 2025, the personal destruction. Marcus's wife, Patricia Chen, filed for divorce. Court documents revealed she was seeking sole custody of their 2 children and 75% of assets, claiming Marcus had hidden assets and committed financial fraud. She also revealed that Marcus had been having an affair with a subordinate, another abuse of power to add to his collection. His country club revoked his membership after members complained they didn't want to associate with him. His alumni association from Harvard Business School removed him from their board. Even his beloved golf buddies, the same ones who'd benefited from his discrimination, distanced themselves, afraid of guilt by association. June 3, 2025, the settlement. Meridian Tech's new CEO, Dr. Patricia Williams, yes, the MIT professor who'd exposed Ryan at the conference, reached out to me personally. She wanted to settle. The offer was staggering: $4.7 million in back pay and damages to me personally. $50 million fund for all affected employees. Complete restructuring of compensation with external oversight. Mandatory discrimination training developed by experts I would approve. A public apology in major newspapers. And my favorite part, the TAL Initiative, a $10 million annual scholarship fund for women and minorities in tech. I accepted, but with one condition: Marcus's name would be permanently removed from everything at Meridian. The Chin Innovation Center became the Equity in Tech Center. His parking spot was given to the janitor he'd been rude to for years. His portrait in the executive gallery was replaced with a photo of all the women engineers at Meridian. June 15, 2025, the media reckoning. 60 Minutes aired their full investigation. Anderson Cooper didn't pull punches. They'd found 14 other companies using similar discrimination schemes, all traced back to a consulting firm that Marcus had connections to. It became a national scandal. The documentary filmmaker who'd been following the story announced her film would premiere at Sundance. Netflix bought the rights for $15 million. They wanted to cast Gal Gadot as me, which was flattering if not entirely accurate. Marcus tried to fight back with his own media campaign, appearing on a podcast known for defending disgraced executives. It backfired spectacularly when the host, known for softball questions, actually grilled him after his daughter revealed she'd been discriminated against at her job. Marcus walked out mid-interview, but not before calling the host a beta male who doesn't understand business. The clip went viral with the hashtag Marcus Meltdown. June 20, 2025, the industry blacklist. Word traveled fast in tech circles. Marcus applied to 47 different companies over 3 weeks. All rejected him, most within hours of receiving his application. One recruiter accidentally replied all to an email chain: "Are you kidding? Marcus Chen? I wouldn't hire him to manage a lemonade stand. He's toxic waste in a suit." He tried to start his own consulting firm, but potential clients Googled him and found 847,000 results for Marcus Chen discrimination. His mugshot as the top image result. A Wikipedia page titled Marcus Chen and the Meridian Tech Discrimination Scandal. Urban Dictionary had added to pull a Marcus meaning to discriminate so badly you destroy your own career. June 30, 2025, the criminal trial begins. The trial was a media circus. Marcus arrived in a 10-year-old Honda. His Tesla had been repossessed after he couldn't make payments, wearing an ill-fitting suit from Target. His dream team of lawyers had abandoned him when he couldn't pay their retainer, leaving him with an overworked public defender. The prosecution's evidence was overwhelming. They had my recordings, documents, emails, and testimony from 73 witnesses. Even Marcus's own mother testified against him, revealing he'd stolen money from her retirement account to fund his lifestyle after his assets were frozen. The most damaging testimony came from his former assistant, Maria Rodriguez, who revealed that Marcus kept a spreadsheet rating female employees by attractiveness and made hiring decisions based on it. She'd kept copies of everything, waiting for the right moment to expose him. July 8, 2025, the verdict. Guilty on all counts. I was in the courtroom when they read the verdict. Marcus's face went through every stage of grief in 30 seconds. Denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and finally, a broken acceptance. The judge, the Honorable Linda Washington, a black woman who'd fought discrimination her entire career, didn't mince words during sentencing. Mr. Chen, you didn't just discriminate against individuals. You perpetuated a system that stolen dreams, careers, and financial security from hundreds of people. You did it knowingly, systematically, and with malice. This court sentences you to 12 years in federal prison, followed by 5 years of supervised release. You are also ordered to pay $15 million in restitution. Marcus collapsed. Literally fell to his knees in the courtroom. His own lawyer had to help him up. As they led him away in handcuffs, he looked at me. For a moment, I saw something like recognition in his eyes, the understanding that he'd created his own destruction by underestimating the very people he'd oppressed. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I simply nodded and walked away. 1 year later, I stood in front of 500 young women at the inaugural TAL Initiative Summit at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. The same auditorium where I'd been humiliated at the conference now bore a plaque with my name as the keynote speaker. But this isn't just a story about my transformation. It's about the ripple effects of standing up to injustice. Since the Meridian scandal broke, the industry changed. 73 companies conducted emergency pay equity audits. 12 states passed stronger equal pay legislation. The SEC now requires discrimination liability disclosure in annual reports. The Marcus Chen Memorial Act, yes, they named it that to ensure his shame lived forever, made systematic wage discrimination a federal felony with mandatory minimum sentences. The lives I touched. Lisa Chen, still no relation to Marcus, got her algorithm credited and a $2.3 million settlement. She started her own AI company and just closed a $50 million Series B funding round. Derek Washington became Meridian's chief diversity officer with a mandate to rebuild the culture. Under his leadership, the company achieved pay equity within 18 months. Maria Rodriguez went to law school with the settlement money and now specializes in employment discrimination cases. She's won every single one. Jennifer from HR became a whistleblower advocate, helping employees at other companies expose discrimination. She's testified before Congress 3 times. Even Ryan Morrison found redemption. He publicly apologized, donated his entire settlement to women's coding boot camps, and now works at a nonprofit teaching underserved kids to code. He sends me a Christmas card every year with updates on his students. My new life. With the settlement money, I started my own company, Equity Tech Solutions. We audit companies for pay discrimination and help them fix it before it becomes a scandal. It's ironic, companies now pay me millions to prevent what happened to Meridian. We've grown to 200 employees in just 1 year. And yes, we have perfect pay equity. I bought my dream house, nothing ostentatious, just a beautiful craftsman with a garden where I grow the tomatoes my mother loved. Her picture sits on my desk next to my Harvard Business School honorary doctorate. They gave it to me last month, the same week they officially revoked Marcus's MBA. But the best part of my new life isn't the money or recognition. It's the emails I get every day from women who found the courage to fight their own Marcus Chens. Last week, a young engineer from India wrote, "I was about to quit tech entirely. Then I saw your story. Today, I got promoted to lead architect and a 40% raise after proving discrimination. Thank you for showing me that fighting back is possible. Where are they now? Marcus Chen is serving his sentence at the Federal Correctional Institution in Oxford, Wisconsin. His job? Cleaning toilets for 17 cents an hour, still more than the pay gap he created for women. His wife remarried his former best friend. His kids legally changed their last name. He writes me letters sometimes, alternating between apologies and threats. I forward them all to the FBI. The chairman, Robert Hutchinson, died of a heart attack during his own trial. His estate is being sued by 400 former employees. David Sterling, the chief legal officer, was disbarred and works as a paralegal at a strip mall law firm that specializes in traffic tickets. Meridian Tech, under Dr. Patricia Williams's leadership, has become a model for corporate equality. Their stock has recovered and exceeded previous highs. Turns out, treating people fairly is good for business. The final confrontation. 6 months ago, I received a request for a prison visit from Marcus. Against my lawyer's advice, I went. He looked older, grayer, smaller. The orange jumpsuit had replaced his power suits. The arrogance had been beaten out of him by reality. I need you to know something, he said, his voice hoarse. I was wrong. About everything. I waited. I destroyed my own life, he continued. My family, my career, everything. And for what? To feel powerful? To save money that wasn't even mine? You destroyed a lot of lives, Marcus, I said quietly. Not just your own. I know. I think about it every day. The women I held back, the careers I killed, the dreams I stole. I can't fix it. I can't make it right. No, I agreed. You can't. We sat in silence for a moment. Why did you come? He finally asked. Closure, I said. And to tell you something, I forgive you. His head snapped up, eyes wide. Not for you, I clarified. For me. Carrying hatred is exhausting, and you're not worth the energy anymore. You're just a cautionary tale now, Marcus. A reminder of what happens when power corrupts and karma comes calling. As I stood to leave, he called out, Tal? I turned. I'm sorry. Truly sorry. I nodded and walked away. I haven't looked back since. The message. If you're reading this and seeing yourself in my story, whether you're the one being discriminated against or the one doing the discriminating, know this. To the victims, document everything. Build your case. Find your allies. And when the moment comes, don't hesitate. Your silence protects their power. Your voice can destroy it. To the perpetrators, we see you. We're documenting you. And someday, when you least expect it, when you think you're untouchable, someone like me will bring your whole world crashing down. Consider this your warning. To the bystanders, your silence is complicity. Speaking up might be scary, but it's necessary. Be the Jennifer who provides inside information. Be the Dr. Williams who asks the hard questions. Be the person who says this isn't right when everyone else stays quiet. The last word. They say revenge is a dish best served cold. But I disagree. Revenge is best served with evidence, legal backing, public exposure, and complete systematic destruction of everything your oppressor built on the backs of those they oppressed. Marcus thought he was playing chess while I was playing checkers. He never realized I wasn't playing at all, I was building a case. Every condescending comment became evidence. Every stolen idea became documentation. Every act of discrimination became another nail in his coffin. For 5 years, he saw me as weak, emotional, not leadership material. He never suspected that the quiet woman in the back of the room was orchestrating his complete destruction. The truth is, Marcus created me. His discrimination forged my determination. His theft taught me strategy. His cruelty gave me purpose. In trying to destroy me, he created his own destroyer. The settlement money was nice. The vindication was better. But the best part? Knowing that somewhere in a federal prison, Marcus Chin cleans toilets while thinking about how a woman he called not executive material executed the most devastating corporate takedown in modern history. I didn't just win. I destroyed him so completely that his name became a cautionary verb in business schools. I turned his legacy into a monument to his own failure. I made him infamous for all the wrong reasons. And I did it all with evidence, intelligence, and the kind of strategic thinking he never believed a woman could possess. Some people say I went too far. That I should have been satisfied with a settlement and an apology. To them, I say, Marcus didn't just underpay me. He stole my ideas, killed my mother's hope of seeing me succeed, and tried to destroy my spirit. He did this to hundreds of women. He would have continued doing it forever if I hadn't stopped him. I didn't go too far. I went exactly as far as necessary. The Harvard Business Review published my case study last month. The title? The $3.6 million Mistake, How Gender Discrimination Destroyed a Corporate Empire. But I prefer my own title, How I Turned My Salary Difference into His Prison Sentence. If this story resonated with you, share it. Not for views or likes, but because someone in your network might be the next Tal, gathering evidence and waiting for their moment. Or they might be the next Marcus, who needs to understand that discrimination isn't just wrong, it's dangerous. Your share could change a life or save a career. Remember, document everything. Build your case. And when the moment comes, execute without mercy. Because revenge isn't about anger. It's about justice. And justice, when properly executed, is beautiful. 1 year after the trial, this email was leaked to the press. From Marcus Chen number 78432. To Meridian Tech all staff. Subject, a letter from prison. To my former colleagues. By the time you read this, I will have served 18 months of my sentence. I write not seeking forgiveness, I know I don't deserve it, but to warn others who might be walking my path. I see now what I refused to see then, that in diminishing others, I diminished myself. In stealing credit, I lost credibility. In discriminating against women, I revealed myself as the weakest person in every room. Tal was right about everything. She was the brain, the talent, the future. I was just a parasite feeding off the brilliance of people I was too insecure to recognize as equals. To anyone reading this who sees themselves in my actions, stop. Change. Apologize. Make it right. Because I promise you, there's a Tal in your organization right now, documenting everything, building their case, waiting for the perfect moment to destroy you. And when they do, you'll deserve it. Marcus Chen. FCI Oxford. Inmate number 78432. P.S. They published the salary data last week. Tal was underpaid by $341,000 over 5 years. That's what I stole from her. That's what destroyed me. Remember that number, $341,000. That's the price of my soul.